let's go ahead and dig into where we're at, what we have questions teed up. We've been collecting a lot of questions and a lot of more contributions of people asking questions. And so again, if you want questions answered, please go ahead and either dump them in the chat now, or we also have it teed up every week for the Q&A to drop your questions live on inside of Facebook. And then we'll get them answered, pull them in. We now have a few questions to answer from those in the community. So
yeah, and then also we email out the topic of this week's kind of Q&A, so you can kind of get an idea of, what are we talking about this week? So like some of Tracy's questions from yesterday I already have teed up for next week.
Yeah, love it. So kicking this off today, we had one question, and this one's pretty cool. Just thinking about it, it's a loaded question, but what's the biggest financial mistake growing companies make? I think
I picked this one on purpose. It was so again, if we didn't get to your question that you dropped in just yesterday or today, it's because we tee them up a week prior so we can email out the topic. So Aaron, I picked this one on purpose.
Yeah, it's a great question.
It's a great question because I've been through it, but I know you've been through it. I think we've all been through it as business owners. And man, it's like, where do you start? It could be pricing. It could be, I love the question where like people are like, but I need my business to pay me $8,000 a month because I'm paying my my son's college. I'm like, the business doesn't care that your son needs to go to college or that you want a BMW. Or is it debt, or is it overspending, right? Shiny object syndrome.
Big time with shiny objects too. You see a lot of that in the industry.
Yeah. And, I call that death by 1,000 cuts. You're like, oh, but it's only $59 and $89. And like, it's death by 1,000 cuts. And, man, it is a real problem though. And so I'd love to just kind of dive into, your perspective on it. And how do you know, how do we know what we should be spending on? And what do we look at? Like, what do we need to be a healthy business? What's simply not true? What have we been lied to about like money, I think sometimes, or spending? What's simply not true? And then how do you double that revenue, or even just not even double your revenue? You could double your cash flow by not even doubling your revenue when you cut back. And how do we cut that cash flow? So if you want to get us kicked off.
Yeah, I mean, I love this question because we went through this, and you think that the more money that you're making, the more money that you can spend. And it's just simply not true. Expenses go up, and if you really don't know those expenses, you're going to, fail. And it's really amazing because this really, the one layer deep view has really taught me and how to go through our book and really just simplify, the company. So, there's a couple things that, money doesn't disappear because accounting has failed, or, money usually disappears because the operations become more complicated, especially as you get bigger. And you hire more people before systems are even fixed, and so then you're spending more money in training, and you're not really fixing the problem. And we're actually going through this right now, is fixing our training, because we are continuing to grow, but we are continuing to hire as well. You hire people, like we said, before your systems even existed, and you're adding services to create complex opportunities. So if you want to get into window cleaning, you just can't get into window cleaning if you're a cleaning company, residential cleaning company, and you just start adding more things to see, and it just becomes more chaos. You bought the equipment, before you actually know how to use it or price it or train on it.
Or you bought or you bought the software before you needed it because you thought it was going to fix your problem.
Yeah, a lot of people do that. They buy the more or the most expensive software because of everybody else is using that software. And then if you're not properly using it or know how to use it, you wind up spending more money, and it just complicates more things. So yeah, it's a really great question because we went through this when you had shared the budget sheet with us, and I
Yes.
think that's something that everyone could really learn off of. And I actually went back into it, and that's I figured out my percentages of what we were spending on hiring and training and recruiting and all of those things to make sure that what's broken in the business, and we need to address things and fix things because it always happens. I mean, I've gone through all of our financials and cut out thousands of dollars a month from unnecessary expenses.
Yeah, and I think there's some really good buckets to look at. One is like there's always that term, and it always makes me giggle because I think about it in an inappropriate way. Chris is laughing. What's the term, Chris? Do you know
No.
what the term is? And I never really understood it, but it was like keep your nuts small. And I'm sorry, like you never really understand it until you start to get until you get larger and larger and larger, and you're like, oh my god, I've bought. At one time I looked at Chris. We had 4 cars. I'm like, why do we need 4 cars? And then when I wanted to go grow the business, I couldn't because I had 4 cars.
Yeah.
And so keeping that small for me is like, we'll go back to one layer deep, is like, it's one layer deep-esque. It's not just running a simple business, but it's also running a simple household. It's like, do I need this? Do I need this subscription? Like, and they can get out of control. So I love that term, and we have to take it seriously. And I also, when you said we looked at our budget, we did the budget spreadsheet. I worked with Aaron on that spreadsheet a long time ago, and I can share the spreadsheet and the recording in the One Layer Deep operators group. It's a very basic spreadsheet. I just taught like how do you use it, and so you can look at the percentages of what you're running. But I'd love to ask everybody, like, what is your number one expense right now? What is your highest expense right now? It could be by a percentage, or it could just be what you feel right now. I know Aaron's
drop
going to
that in
say
the chat.
recruiting.
Drop that in
I
the
know
chat.
Aaron's going to say recruiting. I read your email the other day.
But it's actually not that. That's not our number
No,
one.
I know.
You
What's
know,
your number one expense right now? I'll be
yeah,
honest. Mine is my CRM.
yeah, ours too. Ours is very expensive.
Yeah.
And
Obviously not your cogs.
mhm. And one of the things too, Libby, is that when we were doing this, and we're still going through this, is when we are all said and done. I mean, we simplified our phone systems, right? Remember when I sent you that sheet and I showed you all those different numbers because of all these different people that came on, and all the, we had three or four different communications.
That's because you hired a marketing company and they wanted to make it complicated.
Yeah, yeah. And so we when we're all said and done, we will basically just have in our company running around 1.5 heading towards 2, is that we will only have 3 systems that we are working out of. And that's all you need. Because again, as if you want to grow, you need to simplify, and that's the whole one layer deep method of everything that you look at, is that you don't need these 3 things to do this one thing, or you don't need these 2 things to do these 5 things. You really need to look at everything that all your tabs that you have open on your computer and say, how can I simplify this and how can I get rid of this? And that's the most important, because you shouldn't have more than 3 tabs on your computer or anyone in your office to run your company. And that's basically what we have essentially done inside our company, is that we've spent the last 6 months really simplifying everything inside of the company, so this way we can scale pretty fast.
Hey, Aaron,
Yeah.
I want you to go ahead and tell that to my 30 plus quick links that I have on my Leia dashboard.
Someone like you have like 10 companies, so.
So I think that what you mentioned, there was something, and this is my one of the best piece of advice I could give to everybody, as far as what are some of the mistakes that we make when we're growing. We're not paying attention to the numbers because we don't like them or we don't understand them and we're scared of them. Or we do it one time and we think that one time is good enough, right? Like, oh, I audited my expenses and I cut down everything, and then they slowly creep back up. because you signed up for a little of this and a little of that or a free trial. And so they need to be audited once a quarter. You need to audit your expenses once a quarter. Put it on your calendar, put it on recurring. And because if not, it starts to get out of control and then you're broke before you realize it. There's a whole other topic about pricing and like your efficiency rate for the job. And that's like a whole nother topic. But also, you can only take as much money as the business can actually give you. I think that's something a lot of people don't talk about. One of the biggest expenses here is admin. But if I want to be an absentee owner, you're going to have to forfeit your profit to a certain extent until you become a certain size. And
Unless you hire VS specialists. the
you're
VS,
going to have
unless you
to
hire VS.
Yeah. Because admins get so heavy and that is a fixed cost. It's not a variable, it's a fixed where our cogs go up and down. Office admin is fixed. But if I want to be an absentee owner or I want to, go to the beach on Monday, your cogs are going to run high, your admin costs are going to run higher. And that's okay. But then, hey, maybe I can't sign up for this or maybe I can't do that. And then the other thing I learned was just to stop buying stuff and use what I have. Like my CRM, I don't recommend it to anybody, but it does so much stuff that I was like paying for all this extra stuff. And I was like, no, just use what I have and stop adding layers, adding complexity and confusion to my office. You have to get lean before you can scale past like, $1.5 million to 2 million.
Yeah. And like you were saying, the success expenses, and that's the biggest thing you see is that, oh, I'm going to buy another car, or I'm making a little bit more money. I'm going to buy all new computers, or I'm going to buy a laptop. Don't purchase things that, uniforms, right? That's a big thing is that, if you want to change your uniforms too, you have to make sure that you have the money in order to pay for it. But it's one of those things that if you don't pay attention, you're just taking out of your own pocket and your own profit.
Yep. And I think one of the biggest mistakes we make is when we see the company making money, making revenue. Oh, I hit $1 million. That means we're healthy or that we have profit. I was broker when I was $1 million than when I was at 500K. Why? I needed a different level of office staff. There were different expenses that came when I got there. I was spending way more on marketing to get to $1 million versus when I was at $500,000. And the models change and the percentages change as you grow, and some get smaller, some get larger. And then to get to the $1 million, I had to overspend to get there. But once I got there, I didn't necessarily reassess. And, a lot of people could argue this with me, but you can't literally always be growing. There are seasons of growth and stability, right? Seasons of restructure. There are seasons of like rest. And if you're always in growing mode, if you don't stop to say, hey, this is a season of like stability or implementation, that's when you just like keep churning the chaos of like customers and employees and going in the cycle. And it's like, wait, we got to stop and create stability before we can have more growth. And then you grow and then you stop. Okay, then now it's stability. How do we, what was working work? What expenses do we still need to carry? What people do we still need to carry? And then we plan and then we grow again. But there's always those seasons of like growth, implementation, and then like stability. If you're always growing, when did you have time to actually like create stability or document in the business? It's hard to do both.
Yeah. I've always noticed too, Libby, that we always found that every time that we grew $250,000, we would hit a new level of kind of where we needed to simplify. It just became a little bit more chaotic, or its systems needed to be fixed in order to get to that next level. And like you said, if you keep trying to grow and grow, it's like you're chasing your tail. You're gonna be exhausted, you're gonna have chaos, you're gonna have turnover, not happy people.
Yeah. And I shared this on OS1 in one of our private calls, and I haven't shared it here. And you know why it keeps breaking or it's like chaos, and because your business is a living system. And it lives, it changes, it evolves, but it can't ever lose who it is. So it can't ever lose its values, its mission, right? Its vision. And it can't ever lose the roles. Now, people can come in and out of those roles, but those roles stay intact. And when we look at the business like a living organism or a living system, and it lives, it grows, because it's that whole theory of what got me here won't get me there. As you grow, your systems have to grow because you will outgrow particular systems and problems. And it can cost a tremendous amount of money if you're throwing it at marketing and if you're throwing it at hiring and you haven't actually looked at your systems and say, am I trying to grow a $2 million business, but on a $1 million model?
Mhm. Yeah, and I think also too your pricing. So if you're continuing to grow, and you're not looking at what you're charging and your pricing, your revenue can go up, but your expenses are, going to go up as well. And your pricing, what you're charging is staying the same. So you're going to wind up going broke. And we corrected this too, because, as with inflation and everything that's going on, we've seen this with our insurances, they go up, or if you have a claim on your insurance, you have to pay attention to that. We're going through that right now. And it is mind boggling. You have to pay attention. How much is this going up next year? Is this going up $3,500? All right, well, I need to account for where am I going to come? Where's that coming out of my pocket? So yeah, you have to pay attention to all that workman's comp, liability insurance, all of those things. Did you have any claims for the year? All it's just in general, the cost of doing business every day.
Yeah. So I think a great question for everyone is, instead of asking yourself, right, how do I make more money? We should be asking ourselves, how do we keep more money? It was funny. I just got back from the doctor. So she's my health doctor. She's not like she's a real doctor, but she's more of a cosmetic doctor. And she goes, man, she's always asking me questions when I go in there. Her name is Dr. Giselle. She's like, Libby, she's asking me about GHL and she's asking me lots of other things. And she goes, man, I just had 3 people quit. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. She goes, no, it's great. She goes, they weren't really that performing. And she's like, I felt bad. I didn't want to fire them. And she's like, but I'm just thinking like of how much money I can save now. And they weren't really, she's like, half of them weren't even showing up to work or showing up to work on time. And that's the other thing you got to think is like, your office staff is one of the highest expenses we have. You have to make sure everyone in that office is performing up to the level you need, because that is what takes down a business before anything else will. Is dealing with subpar or low performing or slow office staff. I'm sorry if everyone in here is in an office. My own office team is here. But from a COGS, from an expense side, that is our most expensive. And they're not generating us direct income right now, like where the technicians in the field are generating direct revenue. The office staff is like a byproduct. And so we have to make sure that they're performing. And for my office managers here, you have to make sure the people you're managing, are they performing to the level? Because if you're not, here's where it happens in the office. I've almost like went broke trying to keep office staff that I just loved, but I didn't want to fire. Is that there's no room for growth in that office. There's no room for raises or bonuses or benefits or anything. And it was because, back in the day, I was keeping people because I liked them or because they were nice. And that's one of our hardest things as owners. And it's funny because I have this conversation with people all the time. They're like, I said, if this was a cleaning technician, would you had fired them? They're like, oh yeah, I'd have fired them a long time ago. I said, but why are you tolerating this in the office then? And they're like, I don't know. And I think it's just the thought of having to retrain, the amount of work in an office that you might have to take that over in the office kind of keeps you stuck.
Yeah, I think also too, when we're speaking about the costs of office and office employees, is that you see a lot of people needing the big office or wanting the big office, and that's an unnecessary expense. You don't need in this industry.
Coming from someone who bought a building.
But the inside the building, our office is very small. Yeah, and a whole nother business that we're opening there.
I know.
But and this was, and just to speak about the building, is originally when we bought that building, we said this is going to be great for the cleaning company. We're going to have all this room. We're going to have all these offices. I mean, I can share the original architecture plans. Yeah, there was
Aaron, I told you.
yeah. Don't do
I
it.
was like, Aaron, that's stupid. Don't do that.
Yeah, yeah.
On
And
one of
I
our
mean,
calls.
yeah, we had 6 offices for all these employees and sales, a marketing person, this person, that person, and a small little space. And we said to ourselves, this is, and speaking to Libby, this is insane. Make money off of the space itself and keep the office small. And we have maybe 300 square feet of office for the cleaning company, and that's it. And you know who works in it? Myself and my husband. Everybody else are virtual specialists. And we have an amazing team. We have 4 virtual specialists. So you don't need to have that, person, that's $80,000 or $70,000 inside that office. I think that's a very, we made that mistake for so many years, and we finally got a hold of it, and we just don't have that anymore. For the cost of what it would cost to have one person in our office, we have 4.
Yeah. I don't even have an office right now in Fort Myers. We're running out of my ops manager's garage, and we're $1.5 million. Why? Because we got evicted from our office space. The landlord was illegally subleasing spaces. We were there 2 years. And all of a sudden, at the event in Oklahoma, in Hugo, the day before the event, I get a call from my landlord saying I had to move out now, or we were going to lose everything because the owner of the building was coming to put locks on the doors. I was like, great, thanks. And I'm not even there. And so we still haven't looked for an office right now. Half the stuff's in my garage, half the stuff is in my ops manager's garage. And I said, I'm gonna just wait. I'm gonna look for an office. Well, we have to get some sort of an office, but we've been running without an office since end of April. And it hasn't affected our hiring or anything, our onboarding, or even our supply management. It hasn't affected it. We're used to it because during Ian we ran without an office for 8 weeks, I think. So we kind of already have that system down. But that's one of when you hear someone that has to cancel something like they're recruiting because their office overhead is too high, that affects your company. Because then how are you going to grow or hire if you have to cancel your marketing because I overcommitted and got a big office space?
Yeah, which could run thousands of dollars,
Mhm.
with all the expenses of electricity and, and utilities are just the utility cost right now is so expensive. And I think that you have to account for that, is that our utilities, gas and electric, are going up a lot.
I just got the first air conditioning bill for our building in Oklahoma for a full month, and I'm only air conditioning the main floor. And you guys want these big fancy offices. And again, in Oklahoma, Organize It only has one office space in the lobby, and then we have our supplies in the loading dock. So we're not taking up the building at all. $900 for the electricity.
Yeah, it's
$900. I'm like, what?
super expensive. Hmm.
And that was only the main floor. That wasn't the ups, like the basement. $900. I was like, man, I gotta do something with this building. But the building for us, just like with Aaron, was a choice to like invest in the future versus necessarily invest in this company. It was the company's part of the future. It is not the future. So there's
Libby,
a little bit of a difference there. Yeah.
I wanted to share because Tracy had commented in as well. She said a long time ago she decided to only have an office if the office is multi-purpose and can cover its own expenses to generate income unrelated to that business. Because she said they're really unnecessary.
Yeah. I think somebody else does that. I think it's Michelle Kruger rents out empty spaces in her office to generate some money. And those are great ideas. I love that. A lot of places won't let you sublease unless you own it or unless it's written into the lease. That's kind of how we got kicked out when the guy was leasing the whole building. Then there was a plumbing issue. He took the owner to court, and then the owner found out he had all these people subleasing parts of the building. So I think this is a great topic. And then when it comes to cash flow, the spreadsheet will open your eyes because it's going to show you the percentage that you're spending of your revenue in these buckets, and it's going to put it in red. if you're above industry standard. You can also set your own industry standard. But it's really insightful when you're like, oh crap, my COGS is 10% over than where it should be. When you put them in those line items. So anything else, Aaron, before we move on to the next question?
No, I mean, I just think, definitely just don't get caught into the whole need of needing a big office with a lot of rooms and having a lot of staff. There's, and going into the next, topic of like the AI shift of that, can replace a lot of those expenses.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, remember the term like keeping up with the Joneses,
Mhm.
right? And we see that in personal lives, but there's also the keeping up with the Joneses in business.
Guilty.
You see, oh, yeah, oh, I'm using this CRM.
I'm
Oh, so
guilty.
am I. Oh, well, I'm going to sign up. Well, I want it too.
Yeah.
And you guys have all heard the book Good to Great, right? In the opening, I think it's either in the intro or chapter 1. There's a statement there, and it was profound. It actually is what kept me from changing to another CRM that's a lot more expensive. And it was that there is no software that will make or break your business. And I was kind of like, oh, okay. Like, I don't need to follow the trend or keep up with the Joneses. So it's one of those, you have to ask yourself, am I doing this because I need it, or am I trying to keep up with the Joneses? Yeah. Well, somebody said, ouch. Yeah, it's a profound statement. I read the whole book, and that's the only thing I remember. And I've gotten very good. If you could see the Organize It like expense sheet, I literally have, I only pay for like the main things like recruiting, the CRM. Well, I don't even have rent now. It's very, very, very lean, like as lean as you can get it. So you have to think in your mind, how can I make this leaner, or how can I keep more money instead of making more money necessarily? Because you could make more money, but that doesn't mean you're keeping it.
Yeah, I want to add to that too, Libby, is that because when a couple years ago, when you had helped me with this, and you do it in your business, but then all of a sudden you start doing it in your life personally. And once you do it in your business, it becomes a lot easier to do it in your life and to have those conversations with your other half, or and say, look, we don't need this expense, we don't need this expense, we don't need that expense, we don't need this expense. And we did that in our life. We cut out so many things. I was keeping up and making all this money, and I went out and I bought this beautiful brand new BMW X7 and had this ridiculous car payment. And I mean, it was so ridiculous. And I had it for 2 years. We put a large, we had money, so we put a big chunk down. But when I was going through it, I said, the car's sitting in the parking lot now. And why should, it's a lot of money a year. And I had Carvana, come and buy it, and just drove it off and got rid of it, because you become this person where, you change, you shift, and you look at it and you say, I don't need to, like Libby had said, keep up with the Joneses to have all these fancy things and nice things, and all of these showy things. You don't need that. And I think that's really important, is that you do it in your business, you get a hold of your numbers, and then you do it in your personal life. And you think about, when you're going out, do I really need that? I look at stores now, I go inside stores and I look at it and I'm like, it's all junk. It's all crap. Do I need any more of this shit in my house? No, I don't.
Well, my world famous quote is, if I need to buy shit to organize my shit, I might have too much shit. That's my organizing quote.
Yeah.
I used to say that to customers back when I was in the field, and I said it just like that. And when
Yeah.
you go through like the purge, and the purge could be like a digital purge, it could be a purge of expenses, it could be a purge of your house. So I did my house about 2 years
We did
ago. I'm doing my house again. I have every cleaner that I have available. I'm like, clear the schedule for Monday the 24th. I am ripping my entire house apart, and I want everybody here. And we're doing like the drawers in the garage. But when you do that, you become more conscious about where your money goes and your time goes. Yeah.
Most definitely. I mean, we did that when we simplified our life. I mean, we had this big house and we sold our house and we bought a building because it worked better for our lifestyle. With combining everything together, and with the cost of having a big fancy office and the cost of having a big fancy house, it just didn't make sense anymore for us. Not everybody can do that. They want the yard and everything else. But at the end of the day, do you really want the yard? Look how much time you spend mowing it. Uh,
Yeah.
I look at it that way. It's all the maintenance of having a home is a lot. And you do definitely purge. We just did it now with the back half of our basement. For those who saw it in the June event, we had to do construction in the back half, and Libby walked through and Libby goes, "You have a lot of crap down here." I said to her, I was like, "Yeah, you should have seen it before." This is the last pile of crap. And, I said to Tony, I was like, we cannot move this crap to storage and then move it out from storage again. So we purged again. And we are constantly just, simplifying that point of our life is getting rid of a lot of shit.
Yeah. And if you guys ever need help purging, I'm always up for a purging conversation or some organizing tips. Also, Leia is a genius. Just ask Leia, even personal questions about purging. All of my organizing and purging content is already uploaded into Leia. So whether you want to train your technicians to organize or you just want to ask organizing questions, she's a genius. Chris, do we want to head to the next question?
Yeah. Sorry, we have the chat popping off here, so we're having fun.
I know. I was reading Tammy's question. Tammy, you should have heard some of the stuff I've said to Aaron in calls. I'm like, do you really need that BMW? You live downtown. I'm like,
Yeah.
can't you just walk?
Yeah. Now we're looking at, because sometimes we run into that where we need another car. So I'm just looking at beater cars, like $10,000, just because I might need to run to the store or do something, but I won't have another car payment. It's a waste of money. And never, ever, ever buy a new car.
So on that topic, Libby, the whole topic of geo arbitrage in personal and business, like I'd love for you to kind of like give a little bit of what we ended up doing talking about cars.
Yeah. So, if Chris wants to put what geo arbitrage is in the comments. So geo arbitrage is like displacing yourself, not at a convenience, but at an inconvenience almost. But in return, it saves you money or you get more for your money. And so an example is like, we don't live in Fort Myers. We live 30 minutes outside of Fort Myers, but I could have a really nice house compared to what I could have bought in Fort Myers. You can do the same thing with an office if you want to purchase something or, and it's kind of just like the remote aspect. Like I could have a remote team, they're displaced, but at a different price versus if I had someone come to my office, it would cost me more money. It's the same concept. And like, for an example, Chris and I are thinking about spending more time in Oklahoma because it's cheaper. My money will go further. And so I can actually put more money into the business. So I can grow the business. It's cheaper, not my $900 electric bill, but it's about how do I make this money go further by maybe inconveniencing myself just a little bit, like Aaron driving the beater car versus a brand new car, because it's only a slight inconvenience. It's not like a total inconvenience. Yeah. Next question.
Okay, Libby, pulling this back up here. So there was a question here about we see so many business owners buying expensive software to fix an internal issue. How do you distinguish between needing a better tool versus needing to make a better business decision?
So I don't know where this question came from because we have people pulling questions from online. And so they're from different places, either like on my profile or in the operators group. But I thought this was a really good question to kind of lead in with this topic. It's like, how do you know if you need, and these are internal issues, right? So internal issues most likely are staff issues, right? Some could be customer issues. Customer issues are easy because you can just fire the customer pretty fast, or just that whole statement, no, not all money's good money. But how do we know what's happening? So I think if it happens consistently, you have to look at, is something isn't working if this is happening consistently. So we immediately start shopping softwares. And if you know me, and if I've ever, like, if you follow what we do, or I've coached you back in the day, the last thing I will always tell you to do is go buy more software. Software, even though I own software, will not fix a problem. You're just going to automate chaos. Or like, the amount of people that are like, I'm going to sign up for ClickUp. You know how long it takes to learn ClickUp? A long time. Like it's a powerful software, but the learning curve is huge. And then it sits there and people pay for it, but they didn't do anything with it. And so the last thing I'll always tell you to do is to run out and change a software. A software is never your problem, right? Is you have to think about, is this a communication problem? Is this a systems problem? Right? Where is the problem? Because I can guarantee you it's not in the software. And so stop hopping or shopping softwares unless you want to hop to mine. But Lay is free, so you can save money. But start looking at, what is the real problem happening before you buy the software. Is, if I gave a team a perfect tool tomorrow, do we actually know what we want them to do with it or what the tool is for? Like, if I went and bought a tool, would this solve the problem? Would they know what to do with it? Would they even know where to find it? You have to have clarity, or you have a decision problem. And if you don't have clarity, like I said, you have a decision problem. You have to figure out, like, what's a good process look like. And you could have, here's what I did too. I had beautiful processes, but for a long time, nobody used them. And so it's making sure that if you do have good processes, easy to understand, easy to digest, is it a culture issue, right? A pushback. I can say I've learned this. If you hire people when you don't have any processes, sometimes those people don't like systems. That's why they stuck around. And then when you throw, hey, I want you to follow this, like, hey, here's a new system, they push back, or they disregard it. And it's because some people love chaos. Some people love working without structure. And then all of a sudden, when we provide structure, we question, why is nobody using it? Well, they weren't hired on that structure or when you were structured. And so that's a challenge, because you actually have to change the way someone works, or have to change their habits to say, hey, now I need you to start doing it like this instead of this. And typically they say it takes 21 days to establish a new habit. And so we don't think about that when we throw this stuff on our office, saying, oh, it's the CRM's problem, or, oh, I need a software, versus, no, I actually need to figure out what's going on. Is this a systems problem or a decision problem? Let me document it. Let me create a process. Let me give it to them to follow. Once they follow it, we need to assess, audit it. Did it work? Is it how we do it? Is it broken? Is there any gaps? No, great. Okay, now go find your software. But typically, I don't know about you guys, it hits this roadblock. You make it, and then you give it to somebody, or they either don't follow it, or they completely change the way they completely remake it. I'm like, no. It's like, I just spent $10,000 in a course trying to learn how to do this, and you just changed it. And so I don't know if it's because they're trying to prove that, like, job security. Oh, let me rebuild it. Yeah, it pisses me off too. It's like, no, I just made this. It's perfect. I had an expert help me. And so you hit those two roadblocks when you put all this time and effort in. Either they're not following it, or they completely destroyed it or remade it. And it could be different, it could be better, but until you can prove to me it's better, don't change it. Yeah.
Yeah, what's Magic Matt, he says, I think this is a problem for a lot of people. I honestly think I have a clarity structure problem with sales. I want to say yes to everything, and I think that I'm intervening too much with my sales.
Mm.
I think we all want to say yes to everything. I talked about this on that cleaning guy with another business owner. And, in the beginning, we always say, yes, 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 we'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do that. And I think that a good part is, define what you're doing, but then also, establish relationships with your contractors so you can subcontract it out. You could say yes to it, but have an agreement with another contractor that specializes in that field.
Yeah, I think it goes back to that. Not all money's good money.
Mm-hmm.
Will it bring chaos?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're the view of the one layer deep view is diagnose the problem in the order of people, process, and tool. Are your expectations clear? Is there a defined process for achieving it? What is the current tool which is preventing that process from being executed? You'll only get to the number 3 if you start seriously looking at your software and those issues that you're having.
Software is the last thing you need, right? The first thing you need to do when it's an internal problem is, one, what is the problem? Like, assess it. What is it? And then like with Matt, don't be a Wendy, man. Don't be a Wendy. Don't get in the way. Don't intervene. And I think, this started on software and how do I know if I need to buy some expensive software? It's funny because, again, I'm going to go back to Dr. Giselle. I just left her office. She had Salesforce. If you guys know anything about Salesforce, it is some crazy money. We and WooRecruit had HubSpot. And that was like $3 or $4 grand a month they want. Like and Salesforce is more like $7,000-8,000 a month. And um, she went to high level instead of Salesforce. And so the expensive shiny object isn't going to fix the problem. And it was interesting because she just said, I still have the same problems on the $7,000 software versus like whatever high level is. And it's assessing, we started with it being a software question, but when it's an internal problem, it's never a software issue. It's always it's a people issue and a process issue. And if you're trying to run out and buy software, I'm going to tell you something that you don't like to hear is that you're buying software to avoid the people issue, right? Or creating the processes. The processes are boring to make. People issues are not fun. And sometimes we're like, oh, but let me go buy Trello or sign up for Trello so that I can just avoid the difficult conversation and make them a system. But then now you're mad because they're not following it. And so it's just addressing, remember, people, process, and then you look at the tech, the tool, but the tool comes last.
It's definitely, like you had said, the people, the process, the tool. When you look at the people factor, and we, still as a business and our size, we're looking at this right now. We're looking at all the different avenues of what process needs to be fixed with the people. What are our top 3 things? And we have them, and we know exactly what needs to be done to correct it. For us, it's not the tool. We have the recruiting tool. We have the person doing the interviews. It's the process that we need to correct. And also, going back into, the people that we're attracting. But it's so true when you look at it that way, people, process, tool.
Yeah. And I think that, let's go back to the beginning so we can kind of wrap this up. It's interesting because I don't know if any of you guys saw the Stephanie, I can't say her last name, Pumpkin. How do you say her last name, Chris? The Zen maid?
Pipkin?
Stephanie Pipkin was at Alex Hormozy's acquisitions event. And her question she asked Alex Hormozy was hiring. It's all hiring. And, and it was funny because she shared it and I was like, gosh darn it, I've been saying that. But when Alex Hormozy says it, it's genius. But, he says the only way in this industry is we're going to make it, right, to the goals that we want to make, is that if we look at training and onboarding in the masses, right? Right now we're doing it very linear, very one-to-one, like one-to-one interviews. Hopefully you're not doing one-to-one interviews. If you are, please reach out to me. But you're doing like one-to-one interviews, and then you're doing one-to-one onboarding, and then you're doing one-to-one training. And he said that doesn't scale. It doesn't scale. You have to stack it all. You have to look at yourself like a cleaning university. He didn't say that. You have to look at yourself like a cleaning university, because essentially you're in the game of training. And if you can train good and fast enough and bring your costs down, you'll win. And so how do we look at ourselves like a training university versus the one-to-one is linear, guys. If you guys heard my talk when I originally launched Leia, is that we are a linear industry and we have to stop thinking in the linear. Why? We will never be able to reach certain margins like other industries. And if we want more profit, our margins to be better, we have to stop thinking in the linear. Linear is, if I want more money, I need to hire more people. And if I hire more people, I have to hire more management. It's a 1-for-1. But when you're thinking about it in a non-linear way, and I'm really submerged in the non-linear because we own software. So for 5 years, Dan Martell was teaching us like the exponential way, not the linear way, because software is exponential versus cleaning or home service is linear, but not all. And there are ways to make it more exponential. And I will tell you right now, hiring and recruiting and training needs to be looked at as you are a factory, like you are able to bring them in, bring them out, and target that, like, and churn them out faster versus this one-to-one model. It is slow and it doesn't work. Now, in a perfect world, it's great, yes. But when is our business perfect?
And
And I,
you know, like you were saying, just to hit on that, is that I think also too the fact if you want to grow, you have to think of, you know, how are the Amazons doing it? How are the McDonald's doing it? It's all very structured so they can have that high turnover and that large amount of employees to do that revenue. And that's just a fact in our industry, is
yeah,
that you know, you have to be set up for that process.
and I think it's an interesting topic. I could talk on this topic all day long. The hiring, and so our son has worked for McDonald's. He worked for McDonald's for about 5 years. No, I'm sorry, not 5 years, 2 years. Also, I think he worked for McDonald's for about 2 years. Now he works for Advanced Auto Parts. They're all franchises. Um, but going back to what Alex Ramosi said about, our industry, and he asked Stephanie questions so he could get some insight on the industry. And our industry is not special. Like, we operate at at the core just like every other business. Um, and I think this is a really interesting topic because the first thing people tell me when I say, hey, you got to learn how to stack these interviews, or hey, you need to stack your orientation so you can weed them out.
Back the
Because the
bench.
one, stack them at a time, because you got to weed them out, because the one-on-one it's not just slow, it's expensive. Like the amount of time and money is crazy. And the first thing people always tell me was like, well, I want to provide an exceptional experience. Well, you can still provide an exceptional onboarding experience when it's structured. It's actually better. They're like, well, I can't train 3 people at one time. I'm like, why can't you? Well, I only have one trainer. And but why can't we do 3 people at one time? And they're like, well, I just don't know how. And I said, that's the difference. It's not that you can't, it's just that you don't know how. So those are two different things. At one time in Organize It, we were in such a deficit. This has been a couple years. I did a mass hiring push. I offered the job to everybody. I got 10, and you have to do it in a short time frame. So we did interviews. I think we did 2 weeks worth. We offered it to everybody that we thought was qualified. We had 10 people take the offer. We had 7 people show up for onboarding, and we trained all 7 people in one day at the same time. And it was really interesting to do that. And I did it. Everyone's like, how did you do it? The exact same way you do it with one person. It's no different. It's the exact same way. Instead of onboarding one person, I had 7 chairs instead of 1 chair. Same steps, only took one person. Instead of doing it one-on-one, it was 1 to 7. Training, same thing. I had 1 trainer, 7 people watching. How do you do that in a house? I borrowed a house. I'll be honest. What's it cost you to pay for 7 trainers versus just go ask a friend or go get a vacation rental for a cheap price on a Monday or Tuesday? And or we used an empty vacation rental that we cleaned. So we just bartered with the lady, said, hey, we'll clean for free if you let us borrow the house for a training. And so we trained all 7 with 1 trainer. And because all you do for the first day is watch anyways. Second day, all 7 people cleaned, and the 1 trainer walked around and inspected as all 7 people were cleaning. And we just kept doing that. And then I think day 2, 3, or 4, we just sent all 7 people out with an individual cleaning tech. They weren't trainers, and I could care less if they wanted to do it or not. They were going to do it. So everyone's like, well, my technicians don't want to do that. Well, then they're not invested in helping you grow. You can't say no. They're coming with you and they're going to help. Do you not want an extra hand? And so we did 7 in 1 week with 1 trainer. And
I think it's important too, like you said, going into that experience, we've all been there, where we were short and we needed to hire. Nicole Cobb, when I was sat down with her, and she said one of the questions that we asked, what's one of the biggest mistakes that companies are making, and is not hiring enough people and leaving too much money on the table. And you're looking for that perfect candidate, and I think that you need to get over that in this industry, or the time of people spending with us is very limited, of a year or less. It's a transient job. And you just need to look at the industry as these are employees. These are not people I'm becoming friendly with. And I think that's the mistake that a lot of them do when they're, smaller companies, when you have 2 or 3 employees or
And
former
even
employees.
though you're a transient job, you still have a place in their life, right? It is a transient. Who has raised their children to say they want to grow up to be a cleaner? Like, let's just put it out there.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like Yaya wants to grow up to be a cleaner, but that's great. But society and her friends are like, I want to grow up and go to college. I want to grow up and be a doctor. I want to grow up and so, and I see it in my own kids. They're being pushed to grow up and go to college. Austin wants to be a doctor. And because that's what they want to do. And so it is a transient job, but I do think, that being said, it's not a disrespectful thing. It is, because some people would look at that as a disrespectful statement, but it's not. It's a true statement. And knowing that, you can say, hey, but if they're only here for 6 months to a year, I can still provide a great job with great pay and a stepping stone to the next phase of the next phase in their life, versus desperately trying to grab on to find that perfect career person or career cleaner or career technician, which are harder to find.
Yeah, and you can be that that person that stays with you for 6 months or a year, and if they understand right from the beginning, giving their 2 weeks or weeks, resignation notice, they're always welcome back, and they can always come back when they need to make extra money. I mean, we have a lot of employees that come back,
So
that
do
have
we.
gone on. Yeah, they've gone
Yeah.
on to other careers, but they come back during the holiday season, or they come back right before Thanksgiving, or they ask and they message, hey, do you need any help? I'm off. Yeah, of course. And you can create that backup staff, employees, especially during the holidays. When we are really busy and Christmas falls on a weird day and you need to work a Saturday if you needed to, just to fill in. But
Yep.
we have a few employees like that. We just had an employee that came back to us that worked for us for 3 years. She hasn't been with us in 5 years. And she just came back to work full time with us because she didn't like what she was doing. And
Yep. And a really great tip, and this comes from Liz Trotter, is that if you're desperate for staff right now, literally reach out to all of your past staff that left on good terms and see if they want to come back. But we let pride get in the way, and we're like, oh no, we don't want to ask. Oh, we don't want to ask them back. They left. I have my ops manager, because I swallowed my pride and I said, oh, man, I would really love to have Marcy back. She left. She was with me for 4 years, I think, when Hurricane Ian hit us. She left us because Hurricane Ian hit. She wanted to go work for the church. She left with no notice, by the way. Broke my heart. I cried over it. And we went like 2 years without her, and I needed an ops manager, and she would have been perfect. And my mom just happened to see her like at the grocery store. And I was like, I told Chris, I was like, man, I'd love to ask her back. But if she wanted to come back, she would have reapplied, right? No. And we asked her back, and she was so grateful. She's like, oh my God, thank you so much. I'd love to come back. And she's been here since Ian. I mean, not since Ian. She's been here 2 years again. And it's a tip from Liz Trotter where she says, if you need staff, reach out to the past staff. You don't know if they're happy, if they have a job, if they want to come back. And if they can get you by 3 months, then great. Like, we have to stop taking it personal. Yeah. Great staff topic. I don't know how we got from expenses, but probably because it's one of our biggest overheads. If you actually track the money that you pay in trainer, we do track, but like you look at it, trainers, training, time, marketing, right? The tools, it's one of our biggest expenses.
Libby, going on that, what should be the percentage of that?
We have the expert, Chris. Yeah. The expert is here.
Percentage of time for what? Sorry, I was reading the chats. There's something off again.
For recruiting and hiring across the board. What's the percentage? What should your percentage as a company be of revenue per month?
Okay, great. So I want to put this in the simplest way possible for everybody. And this is the golden rule, but it will change depending on your revenue level. But 20% should be whatever you're spending on marketing, you should be spending 20% on recruiting costs per total revenue.
Okay.
If you want to break it down even further,
because and the reason, Chris, we used to teach you guys it was a percentage of your revenue, but that didn't align, because if you're spending a lot of money on marketing, you're going to grow and you're going to get customers, and then all of a sudden you're going to be behind in recruiting and you can't fill the spots. So Chris did a formula and we changed it, and we're doing it now based off of what you're spending on marketing, so it keeps up with the schedule.
And that's a great distinction, because what the current revenue level that you're at does not track with where you want to be. And so if you're $1 million and you want to be $4 million, you're going to be spending like you're $4 million. And so if I were to tell you it's just 1% per total revenue, then I'd be lying to you. It might end up being 3 or 4%.
Okay, so I'm gonna do some math while we're on the call because why not? I do have a podcast I have to go get on. So if I'm $1.5 million and I'm spending 10% of that, oh shoot, I forgot the decimal on marketing. That means I'm spending $150,000 a year on marketing. Okay, so how much of that, Chris, should I be spending on recruiting of 150,000?
You're going to make me do math.
30,000.
Okay, break that down to monthly.
30,000 divided by 12.
2,500.
Yes, so that's about, we're in line with.
Yeah, I know what you're spending. I just saw your email. That's why.
And that's all in for if you have a software, if you have a service, an agency, plus ad spend.
Let's state this caveat. It doesn't account for if you're going through mutiny. Okay, how many of us have went through mass mutiny, exiting, like 5 people just quit? Well, if 5 people just quit, I'm gonna need that has nothing to do with your recruiting budget, right? If I need 5 people and 5 people just quit, that means I need 10 people now because those projections were not necessarily made to account for mutiny. And sometimes, like I mean, I've seen people say, "I just lost 8 people." I'm like, "Oh my God, what are you doing? Like you lost 8 people." And so we have those bouts of losing like 8 people at one time, and we could have cleaned house. Maybe the water was tainted and they all got pregnant. I don't know. Like maybe their cars broke down. And when you have that mutiny happen at one time, it will take more money because you're in a deficit. You like have to play catch up now versus trying to keep up in the race. You have fallen behind a little bit, so you need like an umph to get back in the race.
Yeah, and Libby, to that point, and we talk about it all the time, is that there's 3 different modes that your business lives in when it comes to recruiting. You're either in stability mode, which is that you're just trying to keep pace while working on systems, or you're in growth mode, meaning you're trying to maintain who you have plus add a little bit for the steady growth that you have. Third, like Libby said, is desperation mode. This is where you're trying to get as many people in a very short window. Typically, it's like max 2 weeks in this mode, and then you got to reset to either stability or growth mode.
Yeah, and if you're in a deficit, like desperation mode, you have to think about, I don't really need to be marketing 10% on marketing right now. Maybe I should drop it down to 5 to get out of the hole so I can take the other 5% to up my marketing for a month. Not my marketing, I'm sorry, my recruiting for a month. And so doing it in cycles sometimes works better. We have a customer that does that in cycles. You mentioned it was like Nicole. She does it in cycles, saying she does these big pushes, gets them, then pushes the marketing. And then it's the cycle instead of it just being a constant. Because if you're at a constant, it's okay, but the business is never constant, right? There's always like an influx of customers, or hey, my churn is high, or hey, 8 people left. And so doing it kind of in the pushes, and then you can throw more money. The nice thing about doing it in the pushes, we all heard the concept of the ceiling, right? What got me here won't get me there. When you do it in the big pushes, it's easier to break the ceiling because you have mainly the money and the energy to push through the ceiling versus like I'm just slowly putting pressure on it and we wonder why it won't break, but it's because we're not doing anything for like explosive growth. But sometimes we can't afford to stay in that because again, if you stay there all the time, you have no room for stability. So you have to go back to like stabilize. All right, I just hired 5 people. Let me do the marketing. Let me make sure everything's in line. Great. Their schedules are full. Okay, now let's do it again. And then you're like, okay, now let's do it again. Versus like trying to do it all the time. And that's typically why we're exhausted.
And I think also too, like you were talking about that, if you lose a large amount of people at that time, at one time, I mean, raise your prices, tighten your service area. There's a lot of things that you can do to create better, stability inside your company. If you're charging that same person, Mrs. Smith, for the last 5 years, the same price, raise her price. It's a business. It's the cost of doing business. I mean, and if she has to go up $40 because she's, 20 miles away from your service area, or you just have to, do it. And everyone's scared of raising their prices, but it's a really good time to raise your prices when you have something like that happen.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. Also, because you're going to need that money.
Mhm.
No, for either a marketing push, right? and then, or the hiring push. Yeah. Because I think too, when you're running constant and you're not doing like the pushes and the slow, it's momentum, but also when you do a push, you see the momentum build. So like how many of us, when you run a Facebook ad, man, or when you first start running Google ads, yes, it has to go through the learning phase. All of a sudden you see like these influx of leads. And that's why when we hire marketing companies, at first they all work really good because it's all new. And then it kind of just like, and so we see that with ads, and then the ads, they get exhausted. It's a term, right? The ad is exhausted, and then that's why you can like either produce a new ad or put more spend on it. But when you're going through it like this, I think it really does create some really good momentum and can break the ceiling when you're making those pushes. And each time you make the push, you can add more and more money to it. But I think too, we lose staff because we're in desperation mode. Then you're like, great, up my budget. I need to hire. We up the budget. We onboard. I'm teaching this actually in Chicago. I'm going to give you the whole system with the rhythms. We make the push. We get the people. We do the onboarding. And then all of a sudden, we forget they even existed. We're like, great, they've been trained for 5 days. Go. Like, I have other issues to deal with. And then the retention sucks because we didn't stop long enough to say, like, hey, is everything good? Do we need to correct any systems? Do we need to fix anything? And the downtime gives you the time to stabilize. Yeah. So, okay, great topic. We're way over time. Yeah, we're way over time. Erin, thank you so much for being with us. Bye.